You're listening to Motherhood in Between, the show for moms who want to rebuild their bodies, reclaim their energy, and keep pursuing the lives they're called to during the season between babies. I'm your host, Lauran Saunders, registered dietitian, mom of 2 and counting, and founder of Nourished Moms Collective. I help moms recover from their last pregnancy, prepare for their next one, and support their bodies and ambitions in the in-between season of motherhood. Because motherhood shouldn't mean depletion, and your dreams don't disappear when you become a mom. So whether you're rebuilding your health, rediscovering your identity, or growing something meaningful alongside your family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Things will feel better when the baby is finally sleeping. Things will feel better when I am done breastfeeding. I'll feel so much better when I just lose the weight. It's going to be so much better when my hormones regulate. I'll just feel better emotionally when I can get pregnant again. Things are going to be so much better when my kids are all older. One day, you realize you've spent months or maybe years waiting for your life to start again as a mom. Today's episode is about what happens when motherhood becomes survival mode and how to stop postponing your life until everything is perfect, because let's be real, that's actually not going to come. About 6 months postpartum, after I had my first baby, we were celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary and we took a trip to Park City, Utah. We were shopping, we were sightseeing. It was supposed to be a fun weekend away. But instead, I was crying in the dressing room, trying to find a pair of jeans that fit me, made me feel good. Nothing felt right. And I had honestly tied some of my worth to a pair of really expensive pre-baby jeans that I had bought when I was at peak fitness before I ever got pregnant. And I loved them. I loved how I looked. I loved how I felt. I loved the fit, the texture. They were just perfect. And nothing I ever tried on would compare. And part of the issue was that my internal dialogue was, maybe when I'm just done breastfeeding, these will fit again. Or maybe when I'm done with having all 4 kids, I can fit into them again. Or when I just lose 10 more pounds, these will fit better. I was crying in that dressing room on my anniversary weekend, and I had a realization. I knew I wanted multiple children. I knew I wanted them close in age. I wanted 2 under 2 for these first 2. I'm now pregnant with my 3rd. They are all within 2 years apart. I knew at that time my body was going to keep changing. And I just realized that if I keep waiting until I'm going to fit into those perfect, really expensive, really nice pair of jeans, I wasn't going to enjoy my life. And that just wasn't realistic. And looking back after my first baby, I was actually doing this with my whole motherhood experience. And honestly, it makes me feel, I'm like in my feels about it now, thinking about my daughter's first year of life when I'm so eagerly anticipating the next phase. I want her to be crawling. I want her to be walking. I want her to have solids. I was constantly looking ahead. At the time, I also was looking ahead to things will be easier when she's crawling. Things will be easier when she's finally walking. And I didn't realize this until I had my second baby, but it's almost like I just wanted my daughter to get older so I could do more things. And now I would give anything to go back and snuggle that first precious little newborn that I had. I don't want her to grow up faster. And I wish I could slow some of those moments down. And even now that she's 3 and I have an 18-month-old and I'm pregnant again, I just wish I could slow down some of these things that I was so eagerly wishing away my first year postpartum. Ultimately, I realized I wasn't actually waiting for the jeans to fit me. I was waiting to enjoy my life again, and I thought that I had to get to a certain point in order to be satisfied. And I think that so many moms are doing the exact same thing, and they feel the exact same way. And perhaps we just don't know how to put it into words, because I realized that I didn't know what I was even feeling at the time. I just knew I didn't feel super great, and I didn't want that anymore. So let's talk about why so many moms feel like they are just surviving. For many of us, you literally are just surviving because modern motherhood is so demanding. We are experiencing a constant mental load. We deal with sleep disruption. We are needed all day long, whether it's by a child or by your partner or by people at work or a combination of all of that. We deal with a lot of decision fatigue. Truly, from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep, we are constantly making decisions, and not only for ourselves, but for our children as well. For most of us, we are managing the household. We are the primary caregivers for the kids. And again, like if you're a working mom, you have work responsibilities as well. And I want to say that survival mode is not always just mindset and how you are feeling mentally, but sometimes it truly is a physiological response in your body. I've mentioned this in these first few episodes, but the mineral depletion that we experience coming out of pregnancy and postpartum, the constant nervous system dysregulation that we are so prone to, hormone imbalances, blood sugar instability, chronic stress, those are all physiological ways that our body is feeling burnt out, and we truly are in a survival mode. When your body is depleted, of course everything feels harder. Of course you're overwhelmed. Of course you feel like you are barely keeping up, because your tolerance to stress is so much harder to tolerate when you don't have the mineral reserves to support it. But one thing that I have noticed is that even after moms start to physically heal, many of us will actually stay emotionally stuck in survival mode because we've trained ourselves to keep waiting for the next thing, for the next phase. I'll feel better when ... As I mentioned with my little meltdown in the dressing room trying to find jeans, eventually I realized I could just buy a new pair of jeans. And in fact, after I had my second baby, my son, I went back to the same brand and I bought the jeans, and they're 2 sizes bigger. And I didn't just give up on my health goals thinking I would fit back into the pre-baby size. And it's not because my health didn't matter anymore, but I realized that my life was happening right now and I deserved to feel good in the clothes that I was wearing postpartum. One big mental block that I've had with my first baby and my second baby was that I didn't want to spend a ton of money on clothing in a size that I didn't want to stay at. And I think a lot of moms can probably relate to that, which was a lot of my hesitation because it was an expensive pair of jeans that I had before my baby. But when I decided that I do deserve to feel good in what I am wearing and the clothing that I put on my body and how I look and how I feel, that made a huge improvement in how I felt mentally about myself. So I bought the jeans, and they were actually on sale, which was fabulous because it was like 2 years previous style. But I was worth my life, living my life right now. And I had been letting a pair of pants determine when I was allowed to feel confident again. And how often do we do that? We do it all the time as moms. I'll be happy when I lose the baby weight. I'll be happy when my body looks different. I'll be happy when my menstrual cycle comes back regular. I'll be happy when I get pregnant again. I'll be happy when this pregnancy is over. The finish line just keeps moving. Another example of that, when I had first become a dietitian and I was working at the hospital, because I was the new dietitian, I got put on working Christmas Day. And I was the only dietitian. I staffed for the entire hospital on Christmas Day. And I was a little bit bitter about this because during that time, my husband had been away for 2 months with military stuff. He got to come home for like 10 days right around the Christmas holiday. Because I was the new dietitian, I worked a lot of the Christmas holiday, and then my husband was leaving again for what was actually going to be like well over a year. We didn't know that at that point. But I was sad because my husband was only home for a limited amount of time and I had to work. And not only that, I was working on Christmas Day. And I remember thinking, I don't want a career where I have to spend Christmas in a hospital ever again. And the years passed and I was still working at the hospital. And the narrative in my mind became, things will get better when our staffing improves. When COVID is over, things will get better when my diet techs are fully trained and I don't have to cover their shift at 4 a.m. Things will get better when I move exclusively to outpatient and then I have no more weekends or holidays. Things will get better when ... You name it. There was always another milestone. There was always another reason to wait. And this is not me ragging on healthcare. Obviously, it is an essential field of work. And I realized it is not a field that I wanted to stay in. And ultimately, when I left the hospital, it wasn't some big, grand decision. It was hundreds of small decisions over several years. And the fulfillment actually didn't come just when I quit. The fulfillment came because I was building something along the way here with this business and Nourished Moms Collective. I didn't feel fulfilled when I finally got to that end point of being able to leave the hospital. But the most fulfilling thing has been learning and creating and growing every single day, being a business owner, growing my family and doing it both simultaneously. That's what has been so fulfilling. And it's taken me years to realize that. I think sometimes we become so focused on the destination that we miss the transformation happening during the journey. We miss the joys of having a little toddler. We miss the joys of midnight feedings, snuggling your baby when the entire world is asleep and it feels like it's just the two of you. When we keep reaching for that next milestone, I just got to get to 6 months old. I just got to get to their first birthday. I just got to get to my next pregnancy, my next postpartum, when I'm done having babies. There's so much joy that we can miss when that's our focus. So let me share what actually helped me start to enjoy motherhood more. The first shift was that I stopped trying to get my old life back. My first 6 months after my first baby, I do feel like there was a big identity crisis, as many women relate to, and many moms want their old self back. They want that fun, playful, sexy partner that they were when they first met their spouse. And many of us, I think, don't want to admit it, but we would love to not have our timeline totally revolving around a child. But motherhood changes you, and I think for the better. And so for me, I started to question myself and who am I becoming instead of wishing for the days past. I started thinking, what kind of traditions do I want to set for my family? What are fun things that I can do this week with my baby or with my toddler? And that perspective shift really helped with me not wanting to get my old life back. The second shift is to give yourself permission to enjoy things before you arrive at that destination, because you don't have to earn enjoyment. I'm going to say that again. You don't have to earn enjoyment. You don't have to wait until you lose the weight or you finish breastfeeding or your kids are older and heading to school or your house is cleaner or life is easier. You don't have to wait for any of that. So buy the jeans. That's what I did. I bought the jeans. Take the trip. Is it going to be harder with kids? Yeah, it probably will be. But you'll also get some amazing memories. Sign up for that fun class that you've been wanting to take. Start the hobby. You don't have to wait to start living your life just because it seems like it'll be easier at a certain destination. If there's one thing that I have learned in motherhood, it's that honestly, things don't get easier. You just get better at handling it and you get more resilient the more you put yourself out there. So if something seems hard or challenging, I challenge you to do it because that's how you're going to grow. Your life doesn't begin after you hit a certain milestone. The third shift is to create something that belongs to you. Now, for me, that was building this business, but it doesn't have to be a business. It could be a hobby of running or reading or gardening or volunteering in your community, painting. It could be entrepreneurship. Anything that reminds you that you are still a whole person. You are you. You're not just mom. You're not just a caregiver. I love the advice when they say, think about what you enjoyed doing as a kid and start doing that again. I was a huge reader back in elementary, junior high, high school. I loved fantasy books growing up. And then lost that when I went to college, when I did grad school, when I had a career early in motherhood. I felt like I just did not have time to read. That was one thing that I made a very intentional decision was that I wanted to start reading again. One, to get me off my phone and get me off scrolling, but to do something that I actually enjoyed that gave my brain a break. And so I started reading again after I had my daughter and fell back in love with it. And it just reminded me of how much I loved it growing up. And you're still allowed to love those things. The fourth thing is to support your body, because this season matters too. And this is where it all comes back to health. I've mentioned before where a lot of us will treat this in between babies season as a waiting room where there's not really anything going on, so why put forth any effort? We need to support our body now. Not just because you want another pregnancy in the future, not just because you want to lose weight or because you have future goals. You should support it because you deserve to feel good right now in this in-between season. Even if you are just going to get pregnant in 6 months, you deserve to feel good right now, and this season deserves your care too. It's not a waiting room. When I look back at a lot that I've experienced postpartum, my whole jeans debacle, working and leaving the hospital, having my babies, growing this business, the dreams that I continue to have, looking back, none of those seasons were a waiting room. That was my actual life that I was living while in these between baby years. The season between babies is not a pause before your real life starts. This is your real life. It's where you rebuild your body, you rebuild your confidence, your identity, your dreams as a mom, but also as you yourself. So stop treating this season as something you're just trying to get through, because it's actually becoming one of the most meaningful seasons of your life. You don't have to wait until your body is perfect or your hormones are perfect or your kids are older, your schedule is easier, or your next pregnancy, because this season counts too. You don't have to feel like you are just surviving through it. You can actually live it. If this episode helps shift your perspective on the in-between season and why you should not be living in survival mode, share it with a mom friend who needs to hear it too. And stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to talk about the mental load of motherhood and what it's actually doing to your body.